While everyone was having fun and enjoying themselves at Henry's 80th birthday party, things took a drastic turn when an eagle suddenly swooped in and grabbed his grandson. When everyone found out the reason, pandemonium struck on a day that would change Henry's life forever. The small town he lived in was charged with excitement. Henry was the oldest man in the community, and everyone loved and doted on him because of how kind, wise, and generous he was. He always had a smile on his face and kind words to give, even to strangers he just met that day. He was celebrating his 80th birthday, and there were a lot of guests gracing the event. There were so many people that his large compound couldn't contain them all, and the guests spilled out into the streets. However, no one complained because almost everyone in the neighborhood was at the party as well. Hosting the party with him was his only son, Dixon. He lived out of town with his wife, Ella, but they had come to help him out with his party as it was not something he could handle on his own. The young couple came with their infant, Junior, who was only a few months old but was already everyone's sweetheart due to how people cooed whenever they saw him. Junior was such a beautiful baby that everyone who saw him just wanted to carry him. Even better, he rarely cried, and that was what he was doing during the party as well. He was on his best behavior. Dixon and Ella had placed him in his crib a bit out of the way of everyone and backed up into the wall so people could walk freely without bumping into the crib. However, it was in a perfect spot where everyone could see him clearly so that if anything were to happen and the parents had no eyes on him, other guests would see it at once and intervene. It was the perfect spot for baby Junior. However, things were about to change in a way none of them could have ever expected. While they were having fun and dancing to music, there was a loud screech overhead. It was so loud that they all heard it over the sound of their music. Everyone turned their heads up in unison, and their jaws dropped in shock as they watched an eagle swoop down hard towards them. There were shrieks as people scampered out of the way, chairs were upturned, and there was a bit of chaos as people tried to escape. One person even fell against a table laden with drinks and food. However, the eagle didn't go after any of them. It simply zipped through the crowd and made a beeline for Junior's crib. Ella saw it and screamed in terror as the tray she was holding slipped from her hands and dropped to the floor with a resounding crash. Then she ran towards the crib, trying to get there before the eagle. However, the bird was just too fast. It swooped down and without even landing, latched its claws onto the blankets that had been wrapped around Junior. With another screech and a flap of wings, the eagle launched back into the sky and took off just as Ella got there, screaming for her baby. Everyone was panicking. Right before their eyes, they had seen an eagle steal a baby, and none of them had been able to do anything to stop it. Just like everyone else, Henry stood transfixed at the door, his eyes on the spot the eagle had picked up Junior. He was shocked to his bones that such a thing could happen. He knew the bird very well. It was Phoenix. He had always believed that he knew everything about the eagle, and now he was forced to confront the fact that he could probably have been wrong all along. Henry's mind traveled back to the moment he found the eagle. Back then, it was just a small bird. It had been really young, injured, and starving. It was so young that it was risky for it to be out all alone, and the injury only made it worse. He knew he couldn't leave the bird all alone. He had been on a hike in the woods when he found the small bird among dead leaves and broken branches. He took compassion on the bird and decided to nurse it back to life. It wasn't easy doing this. He took the bird to the vet, and it was given treatment. He also bought everything to make sure the bird was properly nourished, and as time went on, the bird recovered its strength and then its flight as well. When he was sure that the eagle could cope out there on its own, he released it into the wild. However, the bird just didn't leave, it always came back. It didn't matter how long it flew away, it always came back to Henry, and it was then he decided to give it a name. He named it Phoenix. As the years passed, their bond only grew stronger as Phoenix grew bigger and bigger into a terrifying eagle. They became inseparable, and Phoenix began spending more time with Henry. This paid off a lot because it took care of all the rodents in the house. As a result, he no longer had to worry about storing food in his house. When Henry went for walks, Phoenix went with him. It didn't matter if they walked through the streets or through the woods, the bird always flew overhead, scoping out the terrain for the old man. Other times, it simply perched on his shoulder while Henry spoke to him. All this time spent together was what made them closer. Everyone could see just how close Henry was to the bird, and he never allowed anyone to say anything bad about Phoenix. Many people laughed at him and called him crazy for being friends with a bird of prey, one that he didn't train and was always going out into the wild. He was told off for choosing to trust such a creature, but he didn't let any of their scathing words stop him. He knew that people were only looking for ways to take Phoenix from him, and he wasn't going to allow that. He assured them that Phoenix was a good bird and would never act out of character. Henry and Phoenix were so close that when Dixon and Ella gave birth to Junior, he took a picture of the newborn and showed it to the bird. He told the eagle how he was so proud of Ella for bringing such a bundle of joy into the world, and he wanted to give her the world for making him a proud grandfather. Not long after Junior was born, Henry's 80th birthday was close at hand, and he decided to throw a big party to mark it. For days before the event, it had been the talk of the town, and everyone had wanted to be there because they knew they would have a great time. Besides, everyone loved Henry, so it was easy to see why everyone was excited about the birthday. Sadly, it didn't go as planned at all. It had been ruined because Phoenix had chosen the wrong time to act completely out of character and, even worse, had chosen to snatch the baby. Now, as they all watched in horror, the big bird flew higher into the sky and away from Henry's compound. No one could tear their eyes away from the spectacle as they were terrified of what could happen to Junior. Henry remained in his spot, transfixed, as he looked at the bird. He couldn't understand what was going on. He began to wonder if the people had been right all along and if he had misunderstood Phoenix all the while because he was blinded by his good heart and had failed to see the danger the eagle posed. As he remembered how he had shown pictures of Junior to Phoenix, Henry felt like weeping. He was responsible for this. If the bird harmed his grandson in any way, it was all his fault. A scream from Ella jarred him from his thoughts as he found her with Dixon, both panicking. Phoenix was still in the air with Junior, and at that moment, Dixon and his wife decided that they couldn't just stand there and do nothing. They had to save their son by all means necessary. They then gave chase on foot, running after the eagle. Even as it kept flying away with their son, Henry remained rooted to the spot. Despite everything that was unfolding right before his eyes, he still couldn't accept the fact that Phoenix was capable of hurting Junior. Something had to be wrong somewhere, something that Henry and the others were missing. He finally got away from the door where he had been standing and made his way to the crib. He rifled through the sheets there but found nothing that caught his interest. He looked around him, wondering what exactly it could have been that caused Phoenix to act out that way. Just then, Henry moved the crib a little to the side, and it was then that he heard the loud hiss. There was a snake right under the crib that was jammed up against the wall, creating the perfect cover for it. Its tail was rolled up, but the neck was long enough to reach the crib itself, and the head could fit through the bars and would have gotten through to Junior. His heart beating loudly in his chest as he staggered backward, Henry realized that Phoenix had not attacked Junior. He had saved them. All of them at the party would have never seen the snake because of the way it was positioned, but Phoenix had an aerial view and had seen the reptile. And without a second thought, he had saved Junior's life. At once, Henry raised the alarm and drew everyone's attention to the snake. Pandemonium struck as the guests scampered about trying to get away. There were a few moments of confused movements as everyone was focused on getting as far away from the snake as possible. But then, after a while, some of them stopped running and began searching for weapons because the snake, realizing that it had been spotted, was coming out in the open now and looking aggressive. Henry staggered backward as the reptile slithered slowly towards him, its forked tongue darting in and out of its mouth as it closed in on the old man. Meanwhile, Ella and Dixon were running hard and fast as they struggled to follow Phoenix. The bird was just too far away, and they knew that they couldn't keep it up for long. They didn't have time to return to their car, so they had no choice but to keep chasing. However, Phoenix didn't fly very far. He simply flew a few houses away from Henry's and then came back around to drop Junior carefully onto the porch of the house. Then, with yet another screech, he swerved and launched into the air once more, flying past the frantic parents as he made a beeline for the house. This time, Dixon and his wife realized that the bird was flying much faster than when he had been carrying Junior, and he was flying in dizzying patterns as he went. As high as he could, and then swooping down towards the front of Henry's house where the old man was still backing away from the snake. None of the guests had found a good weapon, and the others were terrified as they watched the snake close in on the helpless old man. Suddenly, Phoenix gave a loud screech as he slammed hard into the reptile, throwing his entire weight against the snake so two of them rolled on the floor and slammed against the chair, knocking it on its side. The snake hissed in anger as it reared backward and tried to bite the bird, but the eagle leaped out of the way and pecked furiously at the snake. It was an intense fight as the two creatures battled it out. Suddenly, Phoenix clamped his claws around the snake's body and, holding tightly, launched into the air. The eagle flew high into the sky, going as high as the clouds where the snake couldn't get enough oxygen. Then the bird let go of the reptile, letting it fall from that height to the ground. Phoenix repeated this 2 times until the snake eventually gave up the ghost. Then the eagle looked at the guests and then at Henry, and with an almost apologetic look, took the snake and flew off into the sky one last time, and he didn't return. When everything was over, Ella and Dixon returned with Junior, who was surprisingly calm. He had cried hard when Phoenix was flying him over to the safe place, but the moment he saw his parents, he knew everything was okay and stopped crying at once. What happened was enough to stop the party, but Henry would have none of it. The story that could have taken a turn for the worse had shocked everyone and taken a turn for the better, and it was something that was worth celebrating. So he urged the DJ to keep on playing the music and encouraged the guests to keep having fun and be thankful for the life of his grandson. Everyone was happy and impressed by the events of the day. Those who had spoken badly about Phoenix before were embarrassed beyond measure because they had always made fun of Henry for choosing to be friends with a bird of prey. They thought the eagle was too wild to have as a friend and that it would have attacked people. However, Phoenix proved them all wrong. The eagle had saved the baby. It was obvious that without Phoenix, the story would have ended on a totally different note. However, none of the people were happier than Henry. For the rest of the evening, he was smiling with pride. He blessed the day he stumbled on Phoenix in the woods. He blessed the moments he decided to have compassion on the bird and nurse him back to life. He knew that it was something he did years ago that ended up being Junior's saving grace, and that was something he wasn't going to forget so easily. He didn't see the eagle until 3 days later, long after the party was over and Ella and Dixon had returned home with Junior. The eagle had perched on his porch and then screeched loudly to call him out. When he did, he hugged the bird tightly, allowing him to envelop him in his large wings. It was then he felt tears fall from his eyes as he realized the grave danger Phoenix had saved, not just Junior, but also him from losing his grandson on his birthday. It would have been something he would never be able to live with, and he couldn't imagine such a life for himself. He owed Phoenix more than he could ever repay, and for that, he promised to always try his best to do right by the great creature of the sky.